Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Blair. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you all for joining us this evening. My name is Rhonda Maco. I'm an attorney licensed to practice law in the state of New York. I've been practicing for over 20 years, and a large part of my practice has to do with business formation, making sure that businesses know how to start and be successful in their journey. So I help a lot of entrepreneurs realize their dreams. And one of the areas where I see lacking in terms of small business is succession planning. And that's why I wanted to have a conversation tonight about succession planning. And as Dr. Blair said, um, we're talking specifically about family businesses, but this also is applicable to small businesses. So it depends on where you are in your business, but this will apply to any type of small business. So you really want to just take some notes and just get ready to really learn some good nuggets of information in terms of how to protect your business and pass it down. So let's get started. I'm going to share my screen. And just let me know if you are able to see this PowerPoint that I'm sharing. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. So I'm just going to start from the beginning. Again, this is about family businesses, but it applies to all small businesses. The reason why I wanted to talk specifically about family business is because in our communities, a lot of times we do have family businesses. And whether it's our parents, our grandparents, we might be the next generation to inherit a family business. Or sometimes we might be the ones who start a family business. And I say family business, and I distinguish it uh, from other types of businesses because a lot of our family businesses are businesses that started from some talent we had that is usually unique to the person. So if we're talking about a beauty salon, if we're talking about a restaurant, it'll start with, someone who knows how to cook, for example, if you're talking about a restaurant. And listen, you have talent and other people can learn how to make your recipes, but they might, the way you make them may be different than anybody else. But you want that business to continue, you want those recipes to still resonate with people and you want it to continue, then you have to make plans in order for that to happen. So I wanted to specifically talk about that also because of how we handle family businesses. A lot of times, again, since it's so deeply personal to the person, a lot of times we operate in a particular manner. And the bottom line is if you want that business to continue, then you have to look at your operations and you need to start planning now. So just keep in mind that we're talking about family businesses, but this can apply to any small business as well. So let's get started. So, what are we really talking about when we say succession planning? Let's define what we're talking about. What do we mean by succession planning? Now, there's various definitions out there. You can easily Google, look in a dictionary, and find a definition, and they're pretty much all the same. The basic understanding of succession planning is it is a strategic process of identifying, developing, planning, and mentoring employees to fill key leadership and critical roles as current employees leave, retire, or pass away. Succession planning ensures business continuity, it minimizes risks, it counters operational disruptions, and it strengthens the organizational structure by reinforcing the internal foundation while creating talent pipelines rather than relying solely on external hiring. So, by that definition alone, visually, if you really look at those words, you can visualize what it means to start planning. It's a strategic plan. That's basically what it is. And a lot of small businesses do not have strategic plans. People usually think about strategic planning when they're thinking about a nonprofit because you have 3-year, 5-year, 7-year plans. But guess what? Your business should have a strategic plan too. It's not just for nonprofits. You should be thinking about how you want your business to be protected. When you think about all of the hard work that you put in to get where you are with this business, you want it to continue. And it is a process. You really have to think about what it is you want this business to do. And you may be at a point in your life where you may not be able to accomplish all that you want the business to do. That's even more of a reason why you need to plan because there may be someone down the pipeline in the family that you have identified who may be able to take it to where you want it to be, to expand, to grow. That person may have the business mindset to do that. And you want that person to be prepared if that is the case. Okay. So that's what we're talking about when we say succession planning. So, why is this important anyway? Like I said, in the definition, it says ensures continuity of business. So again, we're not going to be here forever. And, you need to make sure that if you want this business to continue, that someone's going to take over. The last thing you want is, God forbid, something happens to you or your other business partners or whomever is involved in the business. When someone passes away, a lot of times it creates havoc because there was no plan. So if you want a smooth transition, that's why you need to start your succession planning now. You should not wait for anything to happen. It also prevents family conflict. This is very common when you talk about family businesses, right? Because if you have 5 kids, and now who is going to take over the business? Who is the right person to take over the business? Who should be in key positions to lead the business into the next generation, the next phase of where that business needs to be? If you have a succession plan, you're going to prevent these type of conflicts. Um, it coordinates business and estate plans. So here's the thing, succession planning and estate planning. That's what you should be doing. This is a part of your estate planning as well. So that's why we're talking about this in the context of estate planning. A lot of times people keep those two things separate. That's a mistake. While you're planning your estate, people think, oh, okay, so I'm going to have a will and that handles my personal matters. And then, the business, we'll figure that out as we go. That's not how you should do it. You should be coordinating your business and estate plans now, so that way there's no confusion. Because if you don't speak about it in your estate planning, then now people don't know what needs to happen. So, and you don't want that. Also, it minimizes taxes and probate delays. We have seminars where we talk specifically about state planning. We talk about different mechanisms or different vehicles that you can use in order to continue and hand down your assets and protect them. And so, probate is going to be something that delays certain things. So if you're talking about business and things have to move when a business is running, rent has to be paid, bills have to be paid, employees have to be paid, vendors have to be paid, and then the business has to operate. So if you leave the business in your will, you just have to understand that that's going to take a while for anyone to clearly have authority to move forward in that business. So again, these are the things that you need to be thinking about now, so that way you don't have any problems or the people who are left behind doesn't have any problems. And then also, it protects family wealth across generations. So that's what we talk about a lot when we talk about estate planning. We're talking about protecting your assets, minimizing risks, and also creating generational wealth and legacy. Listen, being an entrepreneur is a very important title. And, we have workshops and different events where we talk about entrepreneurship, and we try to help businesses and understand what that really means and things that you need to focus on. So you want to protect that, especially if you have entrepreneurs in your family, and they want to continue down that road. Getting them involved in the business now is a great idea. That's a part of succession planning. You want to test, you want to figure out who's going to be the person who's going to take the lead. You start acclimating them into the business to see who's going to be doing what and to keep that business within the family structure. So, again, when we talk about generational wealth, I say this all the time. People continue to throw that term out as if it's just something that's magically going to happen. That is not how generational wealth works. There is planning that goes into creating generational wealth. And if you have a business, that should be included in that equation. Okay? So this is why succession planning matters. So now let's talk about business. Again, I specifically wanted to talk about family businesses because there are issues there with family businesses. And let me be very clear about what I'm talking about. So I've found that a lot of family businesses are formed informally. That's a mistake. When you have a business, your business is a legal, it should be a legal entity that is separate from the person. I tell people all the time that when you're operating a business, it has to have its own identity from you. Because, again, I also tell people that they need to operate their business as if they're going to get audited, right? So when you're talking about managing money, if you have to pay sales tax, there's so many different things that go into business, and you have to conduct your business in a certain way. Make sure you're covered by your insurance. Make sure that you have separate accounts that are completely separate from your personal accounts. When you get um, funds that's supposed to go into the business account, it's supposed to go into the business account. If you are required to collect sales tax, you have to collect sales tax. Anytime I come across a business owner who says to me, if you pay cash, it's this amount. If you give me a check, or if you pay by credit card, it's another amount. Yeah, no, that's not how it works. If you're a business that is required to collect sales tax, regardless of the method of payment, there has to be sales tax. So if someone's telling me that if you give me cash, you don't have to worry about this and that, they're telling me that they're going to take that money and, you know, not necessarily put it in the business account. I tell people that, you can get in serious trouble if you do not collect sales tax. They can shut you down. I mean, literally. You have to understand, so you need to know all those different aspects of business and conduct yourself in a manner that is consistent with what the regulatory agencies require. That's the state, that's the federal government, and that whatever other agencies that you have to deal with, whether it's the Department of Labor, because you have employees, it's the Department of Taxation and Finance, it's all these different entities that need to know what you're doing, so you need to operate yourself in a particular manner. And a lot of family businesses are sole proprietorships. I found a lot of businesses that come to my office and they talk about things that they want to do, and I'll say, okay, let me see your incorporated documents. One of the issues I have is that sometimes people cannot find their incorporated documents. That's a problem because part of your planning means you need to find all of those documents. And so if you need to make a change, so for example, if you're operating your family business as a sole proprietorship and you need to now become incorporated as an LLC or a corporation, we need to see your DBA. We need to see what you've done to get started so that way we can make the appropriate changes. So that's why I talk about family businesses because a lot of times there's too much informality that needs to change. So let's talk about those business entity types and the impact it will have on succession planning. So I always tell people, sole proprietorship, I don't think you should do that. But let's just talk about three entities in particular. So we're talking about an LLC. So if you have an LLC and it's your family business, that's a corporate structure. So understand this. Again, when I say you want to establish your business as a separate entity from you, the person, right? So an LLC accomplishes that, and it has a flexible ownership transfer if that's the structure that you formed. It's governed by what they call an operating agreement. And again, what I've found with family businesses is that, they'll get somebody to, if they do incorporate, they'll get somebody to incorporate them. So they'll form some entity, whether it's LegalZoom or somebody will form the LLC. Then I'll ask the person when they come to my office because they have some type of issue. I'll say, can I see your incorporated documents? Can I see your operating agreement? And then a lot of times, either they don't have the operating agreement or it was never executed, meaning the owners did not sign. And the operating agreement is a form that the service provider that filed the LLC just gave to them, and the owners were supposed to actually fill it out. And a lot of times they didn't do that. The other thing that they don't do sometimes is they don't file, um, there's a publication requirement. That's a legal requirement in the state of New York. If you are going to form an LLC, it is supposed to be, your LLC is supposed to be published within 120 days of formation. So if that service provider formed the LLC, let's just say on January 1st. So 120 days from January 1st, you have to do what they call a publication requirement, and that's you have to publish your LLC in two publications consecutively for 6 weeks. Now, whatever service provider formed your LLC, that should have been part of what they did. But you, as the owner, have to make sure that it's done. And then you have to file what they call an affidavit of publication that has to be filed with the Department of State, Division of Corporations. So you need to have copies of all that. You should have a packet that has your incorporated documents, and all of that should be there. Now, with respect to the operating agreement, that is the agreement that tells you who owns your LLC, what rights and responsibilities they have, what is their ownership interest, and that document would also tell you, who's who. You can amend it to include whatever it is you need to do to make sure that the business is going to operate when you are no longer involved. So if you have not looked at your operating agreement in a long time, this is a perfect time for you to look at it now. It's very important. A lot of small businesses have an operating agreement that says virtually nothing, and you have to go back and look at it. You have to speak to an attorney and talk about your issues and things that you need to do in order to make sure that operating agreement is working for you. So now let's say you have a corporation. It is a corporation is another entity structure that is separate from the person. And you have it's share-based ownership. You have what they call shareholders. And the corporation will be governed by a shareholder agreement. Once again, you want to make sure that shareholder agreement has the proper information in order to make sure that the business is going to function successfully, and that if anything happens, there is language in that agreement that will make sure that there will be a smooth transition and continuity of business operations. Okay. So that's why, again, that's why you want to have a corporate structure. So that's LLCs and corporations. You have to understand that a sole proprietorship is not an incorporation. It's not. You don't go to the state for a sole proprietorship. You go to the county clerk's office in whatever county you are starting the business. And you get what they call a DBA, or doing business as. So it is not an incorporation, which again will cause problems because there's no separate legal entity that's formed from the person. And this is why I tell people, do not form a sole proprietorship. I mean, if you have to start your business right away and that's the form that you use, um, you need to really sit down with a business attorney and determine what type of incorporation you need to start. Because, there's a lot of risks associated with sole proprietorship. The fact that it's not a separate legal entity from the person means that if something happens, the potential for your personal assets to be attached, or someone can get to those personal assets because of something that happened, that is a distinct possibility. So the level of risk is a lot higher if you have a sole proprietorship than if you have an incorporated entity such as an LLC or a corporation. The other thing about a sole proprietorship is because there is no separate legal entity, if something happens to the owner, if they die, unless there's some type of estate plan, then the business would end with the owner. Now, sometimes family members try to come in and, step in and try to do things, but that's not how it works. And there's going to be an uphill battle to try to figure out what needs to happen. There might be outstanding bills and all kinds of things. And so you really want to make sure that if you have a sole proprietorship, you sit down with a business attorney and minimize risks, because you're operating at a very high risk level. So just keep that in mind. Okay. Now, when we talk about you know, business and entrepreneurship, we give a little bit more information on these type of entities and different things that you need to do. But for purposes of this particular webinar, we're just letting you know that LLC, corporation, sole proprietorship, there's pros and cons to each one. And so you need to really, again, sit down with your business attorney to understand what it is you need to do in order to get your business where it needs to be. Okay? So we'll talk a little bit about some pros and challenges for LLCs. So the pros, again, in the context of succession planning, flexible succession provisions. You can put that in your LLC, that operating agreement we talked about. You can put provisions in there to have that language to have a successful transfer. It's easier gifting of interests that way. But again, you need to be able to articulate what your issues are, what your concerns are, what you want to happen, so your business attorney can draft the agreement and make sure that you are protected. And also, it would avoid the probate um, that you would have to go through, um, in court. So instead of going to probate, you can put provisions in your operating agreement so that way you can avoid having to go that route. Keep in mind that, when you have to go to probate, you have to go to court. It's made public. Um, there's a waiting time. You have to wait at least 7 months minimum. Um, so that is going to be a problem if you have a business out there and you're trying to continue to operate. So that's why you need to take advantage of these structures, such as an LLC and the operating agreement, to make sure it has the correct provisions in there. The challenges, well, I already talked about them. Poorly drafted agreements causes disputes. I want to say 99.9% of small businesses, especially family-owned businesses, when they if they are LLCs and they have an operating agreement, that operating agreement does not have the proper language in there to protect them. Again, a lot of times what people do is they hire a service to get them filed and they never look at those documents ever again unless they're getting audited or something like that. So they don't even know what the operating agreement says. So that's a problem. So you really need to look at that. Another challenge that small businesses have is valuation disagreements among members. So I always tell people, operate your business as if you could sell it tomorrow and it is valuable. A lot of small business owners do not properly value their business. You have to be able to do that. You have to take into consideration, this is why, again, you have to be operating strategically. You have to make sure that there's measures in place. You have to have the right advisors in place. A whole set of processes need to be in place in order for you to properly value your business. If you have any loans on the business, you take that into consideration as well. But you should be monitoring your progress. That's why you have short-term goals, you have long-term goals, you have budgets. You have your quarterly budgets, you have your monthly, your operating, all those different things. So you as the business owner should be looking at that to see, okay, what did we do this month? Where where were the increases? Where can we cut expenses? Those type of things. So you can get to that point where you could see the profits and actually have them realized, right? So that way, if someone comes to you and wants to sell, wants to buy your business, you don't give it away. I've seen all too often where small business owners practically give away their business because they don't want to do it anymore. And that is a distinct possibility when you're operating and you're not operating properly. So you get tired, or sometimes you just say, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. But sometimes you don't want to do it anymore because the manner in which you're operating is not bringing you the joy that you would want from a business. It could be a successful business, but for the way you're operating. So a lot of times, when you get to that point and you're like, I don't care anymore, someone comes and offers you something that's well below what your business is worth, a lot of times people just take it and I'm done. But you don't want to do that. So you want to operate in a manner where you understand the value of your business. So that way there are no issues amongst members and there's no issues in the event that you have to sell shares or whatever it is that you need to do. So just keep that in mind. So let's just say you have a corporation. There's pros and challenges there. Pros, clear ownership via shares. If someone passes away, the business can still continue. It's an established governance structure. So is an LLC, and you have to make sure that you are operating consistent with the law. So that way, if someone does question certain things, you'll have all of your documentation, so that way you won't have any issues. But you have to make sure that you're operating in a particular vein. What are the challenges? Rigid formalities. Again, a lot of times with family businesses, people don't like that formality. But as an entrepreneur, this is part of the job. You can't operate just informally. It's a family business, but it's still a business. And you have to operate it in a manner that is going to yield you positive results. So a lot of people don't, listen, people come to my office and they have in their mind what type of entity they want. And you know why? A lot of times, because they say, oh, corporation, that's too much. I don't want to do that. But that's not the reason why you should or should not have a corporation. Whatever your business is, you should have the best structure that is for that business. You can't base it on, oh, you don't want to do that, so I'm not going to start a corporation. You're starting off, setting yourself up for failure right there. So, if you're going to make a decision about what entity you want, it should be based on the proper information. So that way you can get maximum results as a business owner. So don't be afraid of rigid formalities. It might be a challenge, but you as a business owner need to know when you need assistance to help you, and you can't do everything on your own. There also are sometimes shareholder disputes. That's why, again, when you get involved in a business, you have to have a business mind. You can't completely avoid disputes and challenges, but you can minimize them by the way you operate. So you just got to keep that in mind. Risk of unintended transfers without agreement. So if you don't have agreements in place and, God forbid someone passes away, the business can still operate, but you might get an unintended owner. That's crazy, but it happens all the time. I've seen it. And, again, if you don't have proper agreements in place, then you might have things that happen where you didn't intend for that to happen, and now it's going to make the business more challenging. So, hopefully at this point, you're starting to see why it's important to have a succession plan, right? Succession planning is so important. Um, you really need to start thinking about that now. So these are some of the issues that you need to be thinking about. Sole proprietorship, again, high risk without planning. It is the highest risk that you can take while you're in business. What are the challenges? Business legally ends at death. Probate would be required, and there's no automatic continuity. Notice that I didn't put any pros. Like I said, I do not advise anyone to have a sole proprietorship. But some people decide they're gonna do what they want to do. But you need to understand that high level of risk is there if you're going to do that. What is the best practice? Convert or, incorporate. That would be an LLC or a corporation as part of your estate plan, and make sure those documents represent what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So that's really what you need to do. Now, this is something that people don't think about either. Buy-sell agreements. You can pass your business to a family member through a agreement. There's language that you would put in the agreement that would say once some event takes place, then this owner would step in. I mean, it would be individual by each business. Again, you'd have to talk to your business attorney, but that is an agreement that you can use to start your planning. It's usually triggered by death or disability or retirement. Some people do have specific timelines where they say, I'm not going to be doing this in another 5 years. Okay, so they'll have a buy-sell agreement. And you have to be, it could be very sophisticated, or it could be, pretty simple. You're passing it down to a family member when certain things happen. Um, Controls who can own the business, and that's really what you're trying to do, right? You want your business to continue, and you want to pick the person that you want to own the business. It sets the valuation method, which is very important. Like I said, that's an area where people tend to fall short. And it's something that you need to think about now. And here's another good thing. we're going to have a webinar that talks about life insurance specifically as a tool to use in estate planning. So when you're talking about a buy-sell agreement, guess what? A lot of times it's funded with life insurance. So, again, that person who's going to take over, would be able to use that life insurance to, start to work on the business and perhaps start to expand or grow the business in certain areas. So you could see how this is a form of planning that a lot of times family businesses don't even think about, but it's time for you to start thinking about it. And those type of agreements are strongly enforced under New York law. So again, you just need to speak with an attorney. And if you don't have a business attorney, even though you're in business, it's time for you to start looking for one. There's certain professionals that you should have: an attorney, an accountant, maybe a consultant, maybe a media consultant or something like that. There's different professionals depending upon the type of business that you're running. That you think about certain professionals that you should have either retained or, on a specific basis to help you with what you're trying to accomplish. So, succession planning and estate planning, there's an integration there, right? So that's what I'm saying. So when you start to think about succession planning, you're also thinking about your estate plan. You're you're thinking about planning overall, and you're on the right track. So if you're talking about if you already have a will, wills direct ownership interests, or trusts avoid probate and manage control. So again, I would recommend that you sit down with an attorney to talk about what vehicle is best for you. Some people are very specific about what they want, but your attorney is, a GPS will help you um, in determining what is best for you and will let you know what the consequences of those choices will be. You should have certain estate planning documents already in place, such as power of attorney, to ensure continuity. But just keep in mind that a power of attorney terminates upon death. A lot of people say, "Oh, I have a power of attorney," and a person already passed. You can't do anything with a power of attorney, but you should have one, so that way you'll be able to acclimate yourself into certain business operations. Now you can have the authority to go to the bank and do certain things, or talk with certain vendors about things and things of that nature. That will get you acclimated. That will get you to understand how business works and things of that nature. So that's a good tool that you should have already in place. Also, aligns beneficiaries with business documents. So here's the thing. If this is a family business that you have, right? And you have 5 kids, you might not want everybody involved in the business, right? You might have certain beneficiaries that will get certain things, but then you might have certain people who you want to run the business, but then you might want um, some people to benefit from the profits of the business. And again, these are all the different topics that you need to speak with your attorney so that way they get it right. What are you trying to do? So, because the reality is you're probably going to have certain people who are running the business, but then certain people who are just beneficiaries and have no hand in operating the business. Or maybe you'll have, a family meeting to discuss that. Or maybe you've already made that determination. Whatever it is, you need to make sure that it aligns with your estate planning. So these are very important issues that need to be fleshed out now, not later. And then also, obviously tax planning considerations. That's always a consideration, whether you're talking about your succession planning and your estate planning, right? So federal estate and gift tax exposure, you need to speak with your attorney about that because there's certain things that are applicable when you're talking about having a business. So that is something that you really need to talk about. New York's estate tax, there might be a lower exemption. Again, that's why you have to sit down and speak with someone. You might have a status or something that might give you a lower exemption. Valuation discounts for minority interests. Some people have, like, let's just say you have an LLC. Um, some people don't even know what the percentages are if you have more than one member or manager. But there may be some valuation discounts for minority interests. Again, these are important things. If you have to amend that operating agreement, which 9 times out of 10 you will, you need to address those issues now. Lifetime gifting strategies, again, that's something that you would sit down and speak to your attorney about so that you are versed and understand what is available to you. And then you have grants and family trust. That's a grantor retained annuity trust and family trust. So this is all I'm going to say about trust. There's like a million types of trusts. There's so many different types of trusts. So now that you have a business, that might be something that you need to think about. There's different types of trusts that will accomplish different goals. And 9 times out of 10, business owners are not thinking about that because they don't even know that's available. This is why you need to think about your succession planning in the context of estate planning. They go hand in hand. They're not two separate things. So, and then once you sit down and you give your attorney the opportunity to review your business documents. And again, this is why you have to have those documents readily available. If you don't, now is the time for you to gather them. Because a lot of times when people sit down in my office, they'll say, I don't know where the operating agreement is. I'll say, where's your last 3 years of taxes that were filed? Oh, I didn't make a profit. That does not mean you do not file taxes because you didn't
Mhm,
make a profit.
mhm,
So, these are things that you have to think about. You want to operate your business in a manner that's going to work. And then when you sit down with one of your professionals who can tell you about different options that are available, that will help you minimize even more risks and help you take advantage of certain tax considerations. Okay. So, what are some common succession challenges? The biggest one, especially if you're talking about family businesses, is family conflict. Um, again, when we talk about when we do webinars on business, I talk about family conflict, especially when the thing about family businesses is that a lot of times people will use family members to be a part of the business. You know why? Because in their minds, they're saving money, right? So if I have a sister who doesn't have a job someplace else and you know I like her and hey, come help me do something. You have to be willing to fire the person, but you also have to treat them as a business partner. And all too often when it comes to family businesses, the lines are blurred and we cannot distinguish between the sister or my spouse, whatever the case is, and the person who's supposed to be there at 9 in the morning till 5 at night, which is the business person. So you have to learn how to separate the two. And a lot of times that doesn't happen in family businesses. And that is a major source of conflict within the business
mhm.
that needs to be confronted. And it causes a lot of problems. Again, I have a variety of issues that people come to me with. You have to use discernment before you operate this family business and bring in family members Because again, I always operate from the position of if you can't fire the person, that's a fundamental issue. If a person in the family is not good with money, that person should not be taking money to the bank. That's it. I mean, you think these are common sense issues, but a lot of times this is how people get themselves into trouble.
Mhm.
Sometimes people take money out of the bank. You have no idea how many issues people, bring up, or
Norway,
they paid someone, with
bath.
speaking with all of the owners and things of that nature. So you have to be very careful about that. Family conflicts are high in family business, and you need to make sure that you address these type of issues. Unequal involvement among heirs. See, so this is very important. I already said, you as the owner of the business, this is your baby. This is something that you developed for so long and it's finally taking off the way you want it to. You really have to think through who are going to be the ones who inherit the business. I always tell people, listen, it's my job as a legal person to try to get you to where you need to be. So if you know you have children who are not good with money, I'm not going to tell you to give them the business. Sorry. That's because, again, you're shooting yourself in the foot by doing something like that. And there may be different percentages that you need to give to different people. There may be a specific type of trust that you want to create where, you put the profits in there or something like that. There's all type of things that you can do, but you need to be aware of all those options so you can make the right choices. If this is a family business and you're going to pass it down, like Dr. Blair said in the beginning, let's just say you don't have children, but you have nieces and nephews that you want to leave it to. Um, or you have an aunt, or you have family members. They don't have to be your children, but you have people in your family that you feel you can trust and who will do right by the business. Then that's, who you should be making provisions for to take over the business. Or you might have children and you don't want them to take over the business. There have been instances where the children don't even want to be involved in the business, but then, parents didn't have a succession plan, and all of a sudden the children inherited the business. Now, because they don't know how to run the business and they didn't want to run the business, where do you think the business is going to go? I mean, that's a recipe for disaster because they didn't want it in the first place. It's too much work, or it's just not what they wanted to do. So they might end up taking the money and closing down the business and keep it moving. But the question is that what you wanted for the business? If you don't care, then that's an option for you. If you do care and you want the business to succeed after you, then you have to take um, specific steps in order for that to happen. So, that's when we talk about unequal involvement among heirs. That's a distinct possibility, and you need to start thinking about that now. Lack of successor training. That's another thing. So, listen, you don't have children, but you want your nieces and nephews, or your favorite niece, let's just say, to take over the business, but you haven't trained her. You just know that she's trustworthy, she's good with money, she's married and have kids, and she has a great marriage, and you say to yourself, oh, she's going to be perfect for that. But you have to talk to her. You have to make sure that this is something that she wants to do and she will do it. And then you have to acclimate her into the business and just show her things so that way she can take over. And then you put the pen to paper and make sure that the transfer will happen. A lot of times people don't do that. They might say, I want this person to take it over. Never discussed it with the person. That's not how you do it. So just think about that as well. Liquidity issues to pay taxes. That's a big issue for small businesses, generally speaking. And then when something happens to the owner, it becomes an even bigger issue. So again, you have to deal with issues. The other thing is, a lot of times people don't talk about the different encumbrances that may be on the business. If you have a loan, you have a line of credit, you have some type of something on the business. The business can be successful, but if you owe more than you're making, then that's going to be an issue. And, the person who you're leaving it to, if they don't know that you have this outstanding loan that is almost in default, or they don't properly know how to run the business, and let's just say they have a loan and the loan was getting paid on time every month, but that's because you were handling it a certain way. And then now your next of kin is going to inherit it, but they don't know how to run the business. So now that loan is going to become an issue. And, the person didn't know about it. So it's just a snowball effect of different challenges now that are being presented to the person who's taking over. So again, you got to be honest about things. You got to put things in writing. You have to put mechanisms in place, so that way the person who's taking over is not going to inherit a headache. And then failure to update plans. Things happen. There's life events that happen all the time. You have a new child, you have a new grandchild. Um, something happened with the business. You needed to update certain documents. You have a new owner or something, or, a new partner. Whatever it is that's going on, you have to update your plans. So that way people, people understand what's going on and there's no surprises. So these are the type of challenges that come up when we talk about succession planning, and you have to deal with those now so that way you don't have any problems. So now, what you really need is a succession planning checklist. And that's what you should be working on now. That's what all businesses should be working on. And what we said in the advertisement for this webinar is that we would give you copies of a succession plan. So I will be able to, or the center will be able to email a list to you. But we can talk about it right now, just so you just become familiar and start to think about these things that you might need to do. So the first thing you need to do is start to identify successors. The first question you need to ask yourself is, do you want your business to continue when you're gone? That's the most important question you can ask yourself, because you know what? I've come across people who said they don't care. They don't they don't necessarily want it to continue. They're doing it because they want to get some money now. It's not like they want to create some type of legacy with this type of business. So they could care less. So, but that's something that you need to think about. If this is not a business you want to continue after you're gone, then be honest about it. What are you trying to do? But who would you want to hand it to? Who's going to get whatever profits the business is going to make? Start to identify the successors, whether they're going to take over the business or they're going to be the one who winds it down and take whatever profits, distribute them, whatever the case is, figure out who that's going to be. And then review entity structure. You have to do that. Again, when we talk about family businesses, a lot of informality there. You have to rectify that now. What type of structure you have. And even if you do have a corporate structure, check your incorporated documents. Because if they do not say what they need to say, they need to be updated. The other thing is, if you have not incorporated your documents, your entity properly, that needs to happen. So if you have an LLC and you did not perform the publication requirement, You have to get that done now. Whether you, if you're within the 120-day requirement, great. If you're not, you still got to get it done. Do it now. Just you got to get it done. Same thing with a corporation. With a corporation, you have to have meetings, at least one annual meeting. If you haven't been doing it, you need to start doing it. You have to do what you're supposed to do as a business owner. And if you went into this not knowing what you're supposed to do, now is the time to educate yourself so you can do it. Remember, we're trying to establish a process so that way we can build something that can be handed down to someone else. Draft, update, buy, sell agreement. Now, again, you have to speak with your attorney about that. That may be a good mechanism for you to pass on the business. But again, there's a lot that needs to go into that, and there's a lot that you need to discuss. But just think about something like that. If you've never seen one before, now is a good time to just kind of go out there and see what they say, right? You can do a little Google search, or you can, again, just speak to your attorney and they will tell you about what a buy and sell agreement is. Coordinate your estate documents. So as you are planning, doing your succession planning, pull out whatever estate documents you have. So if you have a will, if you have a trust, if you have a living will, healthcare proxy, power of attorney, everything, pull them out because you should be talking about all of this at the same time, right? So the next thing is address tax planning. Again, once you get all the documents and you know what you're dealing with, you properly value your business, you understand all the different moving parts. Now we can start to address tax planning. Again, your attorney, your accountant will help you with that. What else you're going to do? Train the next generation. So if you already identified your successors, now it's time to train them. You have to sit down and talk to them and say, hey, listen, you know, I've come across businesses that have been in business for 3, 4 generations. That's impressive. That's very impressive. But that requires a lot of planning, and you have to be willing to put in the work. And again, if you can't identify direct family members like your children, maybe there are other people you can identify to take over the business. But that conversation needs to start now. And then schedule regular reviews of the business. Again, at least every 6 months, just do a quick review. If you think that's too much, at least once a year, because we have different life events that happen all the time. Like I said, you might have a will and you've identified, these children, but then now it's 10 years later and there's more children that's added. And you were very specific about what you want to do. There may be an issue where you want to disinherit somebody. In the state of New York, you can disinherit your children. You can't disinherit your spouse completely, though, but that's a whole nother conversation. But do regular reviews, especially if you have different events that happen. If you get divorced, that's a life event that's going to change certain things. When people tell me that they're divorced, I always have to see the judgment of divorce because I can't start planning stuff because that judgment might say you can't do this or you can't do that, or this has to be distributed a certain way. So you have to, make sure you tell your attorney everything that's going on, but also take inventory of what's going on in your life. So if there's anything that happens, the birth of another child, another child or someone passed away, certain things, all these different things, make note of that. So that way, if you have to make certain changes, you will be able to make those changes. So do a review at least once a year, maybe every 6 months, depending upon where you are in your life and what's going on. And that's pretty much the checklist. And from there, it will jog your memory and it will get you into the mindset of understanding what needs to be done. And then you will start that process. So what are the key takeaways for succession planning? The bottom line is that succession planning is essential. It's not optional. If you are a business owner, an entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur, you need to start planning now. What else did I say? Entity type drives strategy because depending upon what entity you have, you will have to look at the mechanism in place and review those documents so that way you can put the right language in those agreements, right? Remember, if it's an LLC, it's an operating agreement. If it's a corporation, it's a shareholders agreement. If it's a sole proprietorship, you need to think about incorporating your business. Okay? A state and business plan must align. Okay? So here's the other thing. People always ask me this about businesses. They say, do you need a business plan? I always say that you should have a business plan. Now, has every business that has opened and become successful have a business plan? Not everyone. But a business plan is a great tool that you can use for a variety of aspects of your business. So it's a living, breathing document that you can alter at any time to accomplish certain goals. So I always say, please have a business plan and make sure that business plan aligns with your estate planning. Okay? And then early planning preserves wealth, harmony, because you'll minimize those conflicts in the family. And look, I put this in even bigger font and legacy, right? So we're talking about wealth, harmony, and legacy. We're talking about generational wealth. We're talking about passing down all of your hard work to the next generation so that way they can survive and succeed and thrive. That's what we're talking about. So think about what you're doing in business. Think about why you're in business. Think about what you're trying to accomplish. And when you think about those things, and when you go back to the checklist, right? This is the checklist. And again, we'll send you a copy so that way you will see once you start with the very first, very first line, identify successors. Once you start to just think about all these things, you'll see how important it is and how it will help you get to where you want to be. All right, and that's it for the PowerPoint. So let me stop sharing. I know that was a lot of information. It's always a lot of information when you're talking about estate planning, when you're talking about business, and there's like a ton of other things that we can talk about. But, we want to first start with getting you in the mindset of understanding what's involved when you're talking about preserving your business and your legacy and what you've built, you know? It's very important, and we want to make sure that you have all of the tools available at your disposal to make sure your business thrives, right? Um, we don't just want to be surviving, we want to be thriving. And it's very important for you to plan. Planning is key. So that's really what it's all about. Um, and at this time, we can take some questions. I know that there's some things in the chat. Um, Contact information. Will there be a recording? Should we
Tiffany,
change?
Tiffany Brown had a question. She said, should we change the structure before the publication?
I don't know what do you mean by that?
Can
Do
I come off mute? Is that
Sure,
okay?
absolutely.
So you were saying like the sole proprietor, the reason why I structured the sole proprietor, because I didn't have anyone to do a partnership with or to structure any other way. So I did a sole proprietor. But a lot of things that you said, I want to go back and check over for myself. But you did say sole proprietor is one of the not one of the best ways to, structure. So, but also going over the articles of uh the articles in the publication. So if saying if I do that over, should I change the structure before I do those things?
So when you say articles of publication, what do you,
I
because
mean articles of
incorporation?
incorporation in
Okay, so
the
articles of
publication.
incorporation that applies to you're talking about an LLC?
Yeah.
Yeah. So so okay, so I thought you said you're a sole proprietorship. I'm confused.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I paid them to do to register it for me as it's a sole proprietorship. But it's I did get it's blank, but it say articles of corporation.
Oh, so okay, so those
Or
are
is
two
it
separate
articles of
things.
corporation or articles of
Articles of incorporation? Okay, so it sounds like if it's articles of incorporation, that means that's not a sole proprietorship. If you have a sole proprietorship, all you need to do is go to the county clerk's office. I don't know what county you're in, and you can get what they call a doing business as a DBA, and it costs like less than $100 to do that. But that's not an incorporation. So if you ask somebody to incorporate for you, if you have articles of incorporation, then you're incorporated.
okay, so I need to review my paperwork pretty
Right,
much.
exactly.
Because I did pay them. I paid them thinking it would be better set it and forget it kind of a
But
deal.
no,
But
no.
and I technically bought a business so that I didn't want to lose the sale.
Mm.
So I did it for the moment, but I do want to get it right.
Right.
Um,
And that's all I'm saying. Right. And you're what you're telling me is you're exactly the person that I'm trying to reach
mhm,
because you'll have somebody who does it either incorporate for you or do whatever, but you don't really look at the paperwork to see what they did. And part of that I completely understand because that's not what you know, right?
mhm,
You want to run the
right,
business. You hire somebody to get you incorporated and all that kind of stuff. But now you need to make sure that they did it correctly. So
right.
articles of incorporation says that you're incorporated. If you are an LLC, you need to get that publication requirement.
So I think that's what it is because I do remember them saying like, "Oh, we don't do the publication."
Oh, right, right. So when did you purchase this?
November of 25.
Okay, so December. Oh yeah, so
So
you're probably it doesn't matter. Like I mean it matters. I mean technically if you don't publish within 120 days, you're not in compliance. But this is why I said during the webinar, just go and get it done.
Okay.
Now, if you need, but you need to make sure that the person who's going to do it, you have to check and make sure that they did it properly because once they start to publish, again, it's 6 consecutive weeks, it's 2 papers that it has to be published in. And then after it's done, you have to file what they call an affidavit of publication with the um, State Department.
Okay.
And then you need to have a copy of that. Because again, if you ever get audited or somebody is asking you for certain things, you need to have a record of all of this information.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
it's a great question. Thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you. Because I want to get it right and to
Absolutely.
be able to pass on that message to either friends or even my own kids so they know because
That's right.
how to do it the right way. So I do want to get it right. So thank you.
My pleasure. Good for you. I'm really excited for you.
Hi, Rhonda. This is Sean Backus. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Great information. I'm just, Sean, first of all, I want you, I've been in banking for 27 years. I ran business banking for JP Morgan
Oh, wonderful.
and for HSBC. And I'm just shocked and surprised that we don't have over 1,000 people on this call because I know a lot of business owners. And actually today, um, one of my business owners, he was talking to me about succession planning, ironically, and
That's
uh,
crazy.
so
Wow.
is that crazy? So and I have a lot of friends that own bars, restaurants, and different types of businesses, but have no clue or idea of the information that you shared tonight, right? Of what to do. So I don't bring it up proactively, but more of reactively, right? And
Mm,
I just think that we need to do more to help uh, our folks, as we talked about earlier, keeping it in our community, right?
absolutely.
And we just got to do so much more. And I just wish, I think what it is that, and from my experience as a business leader, what I found was that a lot of businesses, they focus on the everyday today task that's ahead of them,
Mhm.
and not really about the things that are necessary. I do recall one time a client came to my office, and they had their spouse had passed away who had
Mhm.
all the accounts and everything. And so it went to probation. And I
Oh
think
my
it was
God.
actually, it operated in Florida. So they had to fly to Florida to take care of that information, and with the county. And so I always think about that as how important this is, because you could put yourself in so many issues. You
Mhm.
know, you can't pay your employees, you can't pay
Mhm.
your your clients. And
I'm
so
telling you, it's
yeah,
true.
so
Yeah.
and I remember them being stranded for months on because they just didn't know what to do.
Mm.
Um, so I think this information is valuable. I just wish that there's a way that we can get this out to more people.
So maybe what we can do, and Aaron, you tell me, and maybe we could talk to Dr. Blair about this. Maybe we can do an encore webinar and do this again. And I
I
know we
agree.
can put it on the website, but maybe we can, because I'm telling you, this is a very this is an area, like you said, Sean, that we really need to get this right. And I've seen all too often where this we just don't plan properly. And
Yeah, yeah,
I would love to do it again. Uh,
yeah. I think it's valuable. I just I am not sure how do we get it out to more people, because like I said, there should be 1,000 people on this call. I
mhm.
should put you on video. I apologize for being rude. On this call, to to help our business owners, because like you said, they're only thinking about the everyday and not
Mhm.
about the things that come after. You know, a lot of people don't know about key man insurance. You have multiple
Mm.
business
Oh my
owners, like what
gosh.
happens, right? Like, you know,
Yep,
so there's a lot of things that we can educate our community about that they really don't
absolutely.
know of. And thank you for doing this. Um, uh,
Absolutely.
I have a lot of the information, but I was just staying on because I just wanted you guys to know that it's important. I just wish we can get more people on this call to share the information. And I don't know, maybe it's going door to door and knocking on door and telling, hey, this is available. Get on this call. You know, I don't know what it is that
I
you know.
know. We'll figure it out.
Yeah,
We'll figure it
but
out. And
it's great information. I was on the Instagram. I did get your contact. So I see that you're a lawyer, correct? You're an
yes,
estate lawyer. Yeah. So you can do a lot of these things for clients. Okay. And the thing
absolutely.
is, we also don't know who to turn to. A lot of folks don't know where these resources are, right?
Absolutely.
How do we find a Rhonda to help me to figure out how to navigate this, right? So a lot of times they don't know.
Yeah, and that's what we do. That's what we do. The center, we are committed to getting this type of information out in the community.
Mhm.
Right, Aaron? So th this is what we're really dedicated to
It's
doing. And
needed.
that's why we do these type of webinars. I have to be honest with you. I have not seen anyone talk about this type of
Mhm.
webinar. And you
Mhm.
know how many family businesses we have within our communities? That's
Absolutely.
like the bulk of what we do.
Absolutely.
Isn't that
Yeah.
crazy? It's
Yep.
mind-boggling to me. So I think we need to do this again, and we'll figure out a way where
Yeah.
we can do this
I'll put my contact information in the chat, and I'd love to come on
perfect.
and share any experience or expertise that I have
Oh, that
with
would
the
be great.
community. Yeah, for sure.
That would be great.
Yeah.
especially be working with JP Morgan Chase. I mean, we could
I
have a
worked for
session just to
JP
talk
Morgan.
about banking.
Yeah, I worked with JP Morgan and I ran business banking for HSBC in
Wow.
Manhattan. Yeah. Um, I also do a lot of work into I actually started a nonprofit in 2019 before
Mm.
George Floyd around diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's called
Oh,
EDIC,
nice.
Executive Diversity Inclusion Council. Again, I think that those are areas that we should still have conversations about. So, but that's another
Absolutely.
topic. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to talk. I mean, someone is going to reach out to everyone who
Yeah.
signed up anyway, so we'll definitely talk more about this. This is very important. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
No, my pleasure.
I wanted to hop in and add to what Mr. Backus said as well. Alicia Goodrich, I am an alum of Megger, worked in investment banking as well on the research side,
Mhm.
and then went to Citigroup and did procurement. So I know the product and the output and how many millions of dollars it brings. With the influx of our content creators that have become business people overnight, and just
Mhm.
like our sister that just spoke and was not sure of the type of entity she was in, because that happened to me as well. When I started when I wanted to open a business and ended up, opening as an S corp, and I'm an S corp like a Walmart. Like, how do I go from, zero to
Mhm.
billions that Walmart is making? So it also starts with the education, and that we are running to the all these different companies that will format, pull it together, and our local community people that say we do business plans and create all this stuff, but they're really not giving you all the knowledge and information that you really need. Because I know for sure where my business partner and I got stuck is when we had to figure out who we were leaving this business to, that
Mhm.
we are split 50-50 on, right? And the person that we know, a brother from the church, did our paperwork, did a LLC, but we were stuck. We've never published. So you know what's going to happen now? We have
Oh
to
my
publish
gosh. Yeah.
because we sat on it. And it's because we are also, you sometimes you start in a business and sometimes it's not with full financial liquidity, and
Mhm.
you're able to kind of, all right, we'll pay for this, pay for that, let's go, let's move. We still
Mhm.
haven't gotten our documents, our binder.
Mm.
So we're also dealing with small businesses that are consulting, Mr. Backus. You know what I'm talking about. And they'll help you do all these things, but don't give you everything because they want to a la carte you, piecemeal you.
Mhm.
And I should have known better, but you're racing to get something done to fulfill something else. So we have to backtrack. I currently manage, along with my same set business partner and best friend, a group of women through Grand Mean America, and they're getting small loans. Now these small loans have turned into anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 every 6 months, of course, with the interest rate. And
Mm.
it's for the small business women. It started out in our third world countries where women weren't the head of household, needed to make a dollar to support the family, whatever it is. It's the basket weavers at your local island in your small countries. But it came to America. We're doing it. It's the founder won a Nobel Peace Prize, but what they're not doing is education.
Mhm.
So what am I going to do now? Take the information I learned and bring it back. But I also sent it to former members because we have a group that runs still on WhatsApp, and my current members. None of them are on here that I know of. So in the morning when we meet at 7:20, we meet weekly because that is our obligation with the loan, and say, hey, you guys missed a great estate planning session. And with that being said, some of these women have international shipping companies, natural product the companies, and one of them I know very well. And she has a daughter that's about to be a legal adult. Like, and I'll bring it up. Are you making it so that she could be a successor? Does she know the recipes? We could think about so many restaurants in East Flatbush in Brooklyn that probably closed because there was no succession plan. But grandma and tanty and uncle and whoever came, did open the business, ran it off of Susu and everything else, and then there was no continuation. I see you smiling, Mr. Backus. But you know what
That's
I mean
You're
by
appropriate.
that.
right.
We're
You're
we're we
right.
we are, unfortunately we have the gifts, but we weren't shown how to use it. And that's what makes us different from those that are in the top 1%. Someone asked me, well, why, for instance, like Trump really didn't have, all this money, but he still was with, this one. Now I said, well, his name carried him and it was
Hmm.
legacy. His grandfather and his father left him a legacy
Hmm.
to run off of.
That's
Now, he
right.
may not be doing it well, but he's running off of Mar-a-Lago and all these things. And I hate to bring him up. He's a prime example of a bad businessman.
Hmm.
But he used the name and carried that legacy on, whatever it may be,
Hmm.
good or bad. He was able to live off of that and live off of probably credit and loans and bankruptcies and starting all over again.
Hmm.
We don't understand that. And we see that also as failure. So there is importance to really share. I'm with Mr. Backus. However, we can do this again. The recording is great, but people do have questions. I'm so glad the sister spoke up and asked the question, because it sounds like she has the all the rights for a great succession plan for her children.
Hmm.
And I could think of so many people that I've met that they just don't know what to do next. And people feed the information, but it's organizations, they're trying. I think it's BOC. I think it's one of them. They're out of I forgot what organization, another not for profit, and they try
Hmm.
to give the classes as well. But we can't run and be first responders. Ever since 9/11, I realized that we're all living in first responder mode, and
Hmm.
not until something happens is that we try to cover the fire with a blanket that's
Hmm.
flammable, and we can't survive that way. And that's why small businesses thrive, and then some survive. But if you don't make that 5-year mark, most of them don't make it. And why we have more than 20% shutters down in local neighborhoods. I can name a strip on Notion Avenue. There's no business happening there
Hmm.
for the last 8 or 9 years. I don't know if the landlord is waiting, what they're waiting for, what's going on. And then we're paying attention to storefront fires, because now everyone wants to build up, and zoning has changed. So there's a lot of things that we have to think about. Um, with that being said, and there's so many levels of things that we can do, but
It's
the
true.
basic information is so important.
Hmm.
Insurance, all these other pieces that no one is thinking about until there's an issue
Yep.
um, that we need to address. So,
Hmm.
Ms. Rhonda Esquire, you are needed, and hopefully that the center could do this again, and we could really rally some folks in
Yeah.
and get this information
I,
shared out.
I would like to
Or
do
maybe
that.
it's just a weekly thing, because I don't know if the center has the capacity to. Because I think just like social media, if you're doing it constantly over and over again, you get a community,
Yeah.
you build a
Mhm.
community that way. When it's just a one-off, I think that's when we lose momentum of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, this was a timing, because I'm like, wait a second, what is this Zoom keeps coming? I was like, oh my gosh, almost missed it. I jumped in at the end, but I caught enough to say, oh my goodness, I'm so glad I did tap in, because this information is so important, and there's so many things you said, and you was straight with it. You may not want to leave it to anyone, but you need to
Hmm.
think about this. You need to do the meetings. We need to do the reviews. We're not doing that. We're just kind of really surviving. Doesn't
Yeah.
help COVID, all these different issues that go on for the small business owner, that arises, and where sometimes we're not fit to do it, but we make the business and do it because we
Hmm.
have the passion. But after passion, what happens? Passion
Right.
and purpose gets you so far, but when you're not covered, a lot of times most people are doing a regular 9 to 5 plus their passion until they get it right.
That's right. And it's so funny. I used to do this webinar, and it's called From Passion to Progression, because
Hmm.
a lot of times we get burned out. You have this passion to do something, but because we're not doing it properly and we're not
Hmm.
educated, all that passion burns out, and the next thing you know, this great idea, this is the thing that people don't understand. We have some of the best ideas,
Yes.
and because we don't implement it properly, somebody else will take it and run with it, not because they had the idea, but because they're implementing it properly. I always tell people, we all know that McDonald's does not make the best hamburger in the world.
Mhm.
They don't. Sorry. Neither does Burger King.
Right.
But they know there's a process and they follow the process and we have to get educated. And I think what bothers me the most is that you know how much money we leave on the table?
Tons, tons, tons.
It's unbelievable.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I see people with great ideas, but I can't not carry your passion, your purpose. And they do um lose fire, and they lose that spark because
Hmm.
of the legalities behind it. You gotta file taxes.
Yeah,
There's certain things, and no one wants to do that. They want the fun part. But just like
that's right.
in marriage and a relationship, it's the good, and you gotta take the good with the
I'm
bad.
telling you,
And
you
it
have to.
it keeps you out of trouble.
Hmm.
It
Yeah,
It
keeps
Ms.
you
Rhonda
keeps
had
you out of
mentioned,
trouble.
you had mentioned, and this is something that you used to tell our clients, you got to get an accountant, you have to get a lawyer,
Hmm.
and you have to get these resources,
Hmm.
relationships that can help you.
Absolutely.
But
And if you
everything
don't,
you just said had a dollar sign behind it. I heard cha-ching. And that is the problem. They have the money to start the concept, but they can't afford the retainers
See,
and the
but I,
business.
I actually I don't necessarily agree with that because
oh,
trust me, we have money for all these other
yeah,
things. But when it comes to getting
No, you're
business,
right.
because I always look at people's hands, I'm like, listen, I just have a regular manicure.
Hmm.
People got nails, you got the best phone. This isn't the latest phone. It's not.
Yep. Yep.
They have the
Same here.
nicest car. Go into any of our communities and see what type of cars you see there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
ask them if they own the home though.
it's where the priorities are. Yeah,
It's
It's
where
where
the
the priorities.
priorities are.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot of discussions we could have. And
No.
you're right, but people don't see the importance of it. And once again, we end up having to douse fires or lose the business because we're
Hmm.
not doing it properly.
Right.
Um, and
We're
absolutely.
operating in crisis mode. And see, this is the
Hmm.
other issue that we have. You want to operate, fly by the seat of your pants. You know, crisis mode was meant to be you solving a specific problem, and then you got to get out of crisis mode. That's not a manner in which you operate as a long-term thing. And we don't seem to understand that a lot of our businesses, because you're always operating, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. You can't tell me that in order for you to pay your employee, you got to wait for a client to pay you. That's not how it works.
Hmm. Hmm.
You're not supposed to operate like that. So we have to really retrain our minds in terms of how we do business.
Well, yeah, it goes right back to the education piece, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and it's about relationships. I mean, I think I tell people all the time, you have to have relationships. If you don't have an attorney, go find one and build a relationship with.
Hmm.
You may not have
Hmm.
those funds right away, but because you have that relationship, that attorney knows that you're going to be good,
Absolutely.
right? And so it's really connecting and forming those relationships. And we
Absolutely.
missed out. We miss out a lot on that, but
Absolutely.
this is good
And the
stuff.
other thing I tell people is like, you remember back in the days when you wanted to get an accountant who would make you come out in the red? That's you want somebody who's going to do some magic tricks and then it's going to come back and bite you in the end. So now when you do get to that point when you're expanding, they're going to look at your taxes and see that you were in the red for the past 5 years.
Well, they're going to come to me, and I said, no, I can't do
Right.
it. I've done it
That's
many
not
times.
that's not
Yeah,
how you
there's nothing
want.
I can. Yeah, you
It's
can't eat your cake and have it too, right? Is that
it's
what it?
that temporary gratification. So you want
Yeah,
somebody to, cook the books so that way you get your little refund or whatever it is that you want. That's not going to help you in the long run. You want
yeah.
somebody
But
who's
but
going to,
that unfortunately that's what's being sold, Rhonda.
I
That
know.
that I love social media, and what is is there's some people that are really making money, and there's other people that are faking it but trying to get your money, and it goes along in different industries. I could bring up a few that I've seen it, and sometimes it's about getting the next someone else's money to
Hmm.
thrive, but really not helping the people.
Hmm.
And it's just and unfortunately, everyone wants fast, 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 and we are caught up in that and keeping up with the Joneses, like
That's
Mr.
right.
Backus did mention. What are we? How are we living? What are we? who are we trying to prove things to? And it you got to come from the ground. It sounds not everybody wants that story, but it is the story of truly being a legit business.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%.
Yeah. So I want to share this with the women in the morning. We meet every week, and that this will be a discussion. And I'm looking forward to hearing more. Having another session if we can.
Oh,
For sure.
that's great. Um, yeah, I really do appreciate that. I appreciate both of you for joining tonight, and the young lady who was on. I don't know if she's still here, but we're gonna figure it out, and we're definitely gonna do more. And so we'll definitely be in touch, um, so that way we can make sure that this information is getting to the masses, because this is overdue. It's way overdue. We have to
Hmm.
do better.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you for your
Definitely.
time. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you for
Thank
joining
you.
us tonight. I really
Thank
appreciate it.
you.
We'll be in touch for
All right.
sure.
Okay.
Well,
Have
And
a good
thank you,
night, everyone.
Rhonda, for
thanks,
the
Ron.
presentation. Also, just to let you know, we are having another webinar on property tax tomorrow. I will shoot
That's a
an
big
email
topic.
to you.
And that should
Um,
be interesting.
yes, we do have a speaker from the Department of Finance who's going to be going over property tax. I will email you the flyer with the Zoom link and everything.
That's
The
awesome.
Perfect.
timing of that
Yeah.
if that is not at capacity, we got a problem.
Um, t-
No, we got a real problem. We got a real problem.
Yeah, that's another hot topic. Yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll talk about it. But yeah, so hopefully you can be on for that tomorrow. If not, like Aaron said, we have recordings, but again, we'll be in contact and see if we can do this in a different forum to make sure we get as many people as we possibly
Yeah, we
can.
should have more people on. Yeah, for sure. Wonderful.
Definitely.
Thank you, guys. And I look forward to that flyer. I'll be on.
Great.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Have a good night, everyone. Thanks again,
Okay.
All right.
Rhonda. Be
All right.
well.
Thank you.
Thank you,
My
Ron.
pleasure. Thank you. Aaron, do you want to